My grandfather was a hero, a role model, the ultimate game changer who changed the fate of our family through his actions and efforts, and deepening the living bridge between our countries of origin and adoption.
Our father, Harnam Singh, was born in 1923 in Multan in Pakistan. But he was born from a humble background, a very stable background. We had several generations of our ancestors being born there and living in Pakistan quite happily. During the partition, obviously with all the sort of cruelty and genocide going on, our family moved from Multan to Patiala in Punjab. And as we all know, the genocide and the atrocities that happened were immense and very daunting. It was a very disturbing time, a very unsettling time, a very dangerous time. And the memories that he has of it are really quite, heartbreaking in a sense, that people that have lived together for centuries in harmony and whatever were now fighting each other.
That transition from Pakistan to Patiala, then Patiala to Delhi, we lost everything except for our own personal lives, and we were very blessed. And it was then time for our grandfather and our parents and my uncles to rethink, how do we rebuild our lives now? How do we make a sustainable future for our children?
He was an influential figure in the family throughout those times in India, and that was reflected in the fact that he was almost the chosen one within the family who was decided to come to the UK to try and make a new life, a better life for the whole family.
Around 51 was when Dad actually first came over to England, but the decision to come over had been brewing, or the idea had been brewing with him for several years. He knew that out there living was going to be difficult, education was going to be difficult, and his main purpose was to create a quality of life for his family and also to educate his children to a better standard. He was able to come over to England with basically £3 in his pocket, not knowing the English language, about half a dozen words of English language, and just a sort of a small holder or suitcase of clothes and whatever.
Language was a huge barrier when my father came here. Language and cultural differences, they were quite challenging for my father. And I think one of the reasons it was very hard to get any employment was the communication.
But back in those days, there was a certain air of desperation. We needed to move forwards. And as I said, Dad was a man of vision, and he had that courage, he had that sort of determination that he wanted to do something and become something. And certainly for his children, he wanted a better quality of life and education. So it was a daunting and very unsettling for all of us, especially him, but the family back home. There was always that sort of worry, concern, is he going to settle?
He in his mind knew he had to make this visit a success in order to support family back home, and in order to actually be able to then move forward to build a sustainable, a stable life for the future generations. People of colour were very few, and the appearance of a Sikh was not seen by many people in this part of the world. So they were challenges and barriers to being able to seek employment. But also there was a lot of discrimination in those days, and racism as well.
I think it was a different culture for the English as well then. And seeing a gentleman with a turban, it was just something new to him. And I think his appearance, his manner of speaking, that just came out very softly, very humble, but he came out very gentle. And I think they accepted that. And that's how he got along with the English community.
Through food and selling that, he began to integrate people and build a sense of integration between all different communities. People had to travel to London to get spices and food, and he thought, why don't we bring London to Southampton? So he opened the first corner shop, and that became a community hub, and people from all sort of ethnicities came there.
So in 1961 he bought this shop, and then the entrance used to be here. There used to be a little meat section right in the corner there. But when people used to come from abroad, this is the first port of call. This was the only shop in Derby Road then, you know, they used to come here for help as much as food and all that, you know, and father used to help them a lot. Times were hard then, you know, they struggled a lot, but they really made a good effort, you know, and today where we are is because of them.
Through his shop that he had in Alpha Street, on the corner of Alpha Street and Derby Road, he was a figurehead for all the communities. He was always there for people. He was always a father figure.
He always realised that he started from that one day as well, and it was important to support people. And quite often my father would close the shop and go with people to appointments, to housing appointments or benefit appointments, or to take them to a doctor's appointment, because the language was a barrier, and it was important that they were supported in that way.
I think having seen the struggles of the partition, I think he must have felt that he wanted other people to benefit from the opportunities that were available to them, and he would go out of his way to make sure that he can help them to achieve those dreams of theirs.
He was a person who was very inspirational. He was a person who was very positive. His attitude to life was very positive. And a lot of that came from his believing in his faith.
He kept his turban, he kept his beard. Not only that, he actually brought us up as very, devout Sikhs, following the Sikh path, etc. And even whilst we were here growing up, those values he retained.
My grandfather didn't come here for us to lose our identity. He embedded that in us, and that is something that we will always keep alive through generations.
In the early days, when the Sikhs started to settle in Southampton, the only place that they could get together was at somebody's home. Slowly, as the community started to build up, there was a need for a permanent place, and the communities pulled together, raised some funds from amongst themselves to be able to buy a place in Clovelly Road, which was the first Gurdwara, first South Asian religious kind of establishment in the city.
Step by step, he saw opportunities to move forward, and he saw a gap within in the community, and he thought, now hang on, this is what we need to do to go to the next level.
When the Gurdwara opened, that was attended by Hindus, and Muslims will come there too, because at that time they didn't have any other establishment. I think that was something that he recognised. We were all in the same boat. Thousands of miles away from home, Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims. We need to depend on ourselves, each other. We need to live together, work together, and share things together.
being British, we have integrated with the British culture, but being Punjabi, we have also remained intact and rooted to our home back in India. My children and my nephews and nieces, I think they're helping the community by being role models. The wider community, family, they know that this is a family that have doctors, accountants, lawyers.
My father was very active in faith life and community life, and that's why a lot of our family now, all our children are attached to our Gurdwara. They have different sort of roles within the Gurdwara. We are very active in community life in different settings, in youth forums or community forums, and that was because we learnt from it how important it was to play a role, so we could influence sort of the way forward.
He had a lot of time for his grandchildren. He had a lot of time for his family when they were all settled back in the UK. You know, spending time with him was gaining wisdom.
It followed from my father onto my brother, onto myself, onto my children, onto my nephew and nieces, and that's why they are so engaged in community work in all the voluntary sectors, where they just go and do their bit to make a difference.
One of our aunts passed away very recently, a few years ago, due to cancer. You know, the whole family was there, supporting all the family the best we could, and that's his legacy. Family was so important to him.
He came here and it was a journey for him, and it was a natural progression, you know, doing what he did, building it up, making the money, sending his sons and children to schools and grammar schools and universities.
From nowhere he went to somewhere, and he went there because of his honest living and service to the community and to his wider family.
I think the biggest step that he probably took was to leave his family behind, 1951, and make that trip. By himself, to go to a completely strange country. If he hadn't made that trip, I often wonder where we would be today.
And that's why my father still, his legacy still lives on, because all those people now that my father touched their life do remember him, and they've moved on and scattered around Southampton, but they always remember that.
My grandfather was a hero because of his actions, the values and principles he imparted to his siblings, his children, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to do good, to be honest, hardworking, with integrity, and make a positive contribution to society.
Thank God, Grandad, that you did what you did for us.